Welcome to Taking Flight. I'm Rob Kroll, the program director for the digital marketing degrees here at Full Sail, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session, which is about authenticity in marketing and how to use AI to elevate your brand. So, at some level, all marketing is about content, whether that's in the form of a website, blog, app, video, or social media. Content's the avenue through which marketers reach customers, but creating content has been a time consuming and often cumbersome endeavor. Now, with the dawn of the age of artificial intelligence, it's easier than ever to produce more content faster and more cheaply than ever before. But therein lies a problem. With all that content, we are virtually drowning in it now. There are over 1.1 billion pieces of content produced on social media each day. Around 7.5 million blog posts are published every day. And there are more than 4 million hours of content uploaded to YouTube every day. With this much content being produced, what value is there in content? If every business in America is cranking out blog posts and videos and social media posts, won't it all just get lost in a sea of sameness? The answer may lie in something that marketers like to talk about but often fail to achieve, and that is authenticity. I'm joined today by three faculty members from Full Sail, and we are going to delve into the subject of authenticity and using AI for marketing. So, with me today in the studio is Diane Diaz. She is the course director for digital storytelling and branding and project in Portfolio 7. Also joining us via Zoom is Genon Murray, who is a course director for content strategy, development, and marketing, and digital marketing campaign development. And finally, Dr. Sarah Skidmore is a course director for new media marketing and mobile and emerging technology marketing. And Sarah is joining us from somewhere where there is a storm, so we're hoping she's going to be able to stick with us through the whole program. But if she falls off, that's why. So let's get started. But before we really dive into the authenticity part of this conversation, Sarah, I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about something that you had mentioned while we were planning for this episode, and that is the idea that we are really constantly exposed to new technologies and new devices and new platforms. And now we're in this age where AI is changing the way that we do marketing and even kind of changing the way we live day to day. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed and intimidated by all of that. And so, with that comes this ability to kind of effortlessly produce massive amounts of content that feels impersonal at best. And that brings with it a lot of concerns and fears for many people. So, what should we be doing to prepare for this transition?
Well, I like to say that AI is technology, right? And technology means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And a lot of us, if we think about what was our first memory we've ever had with technology, it often tends to be, something physical that we can touch or that we remember seeing. So I would actually love to hear from each one of you. What is your first memory of interacting with a technology?
Oh boy, I'll start. So many years ago, in my very first job out of college, I was tasked with stopping every day to pick up our faxes because this was at the dawn of the facsimile machine, which many of the younger listeners will not even know what that is. But it was this great technology where we could transmit things what at the time seemed instantaneously. But it was such a new technology that my company couldn't afford to have their own fax machine. So we had them delivered to like a mailboxes, et cetera, kind of place. and I would pick them up on my way into the office that morning and take them and distribute them when I got there. What about you, Di?
The first interaction I can remember with what I would say real technology, aside from a calculator, is when I was in college, my undergrad, which was many moons ago, and going into the computer lab, which I thought was super fancy, and they had the little square box Macintosh computers with the teeny tiny screen and Windows, which I was baffled. I had no idea what you could even do with that. I didn't understand what Windows meant. Why is there a window on a computer? I did not understand the concept of any of that. Completely baffled by that.
Genon?
Oh, I'm going to take it way back, even further than when we discussed. So I was thinking about the very first time I had an interaction with a computer, and I'm not going to tell you when this was, but when I was in my undergrad, I had a psychology class in which we were asked to create 3 questions that we could feed into a computer and get statistics. And we had to stand in line with cards that had punch holes in them and wait in line for hours with our punch cards so that we would have the opportunity after the person ahead of us to put our punch cards into the one and only computer that the university had that stood in a room all by itself, and it was enormous. That was my first interaction with a computer, and I've watched them evolve over time since then.
Awesome. Well, I think about my very first memory with technology. I don't know, I was probably 5 or 6, and my grandmother was an entrepreneur, and she had a flower shop, and she had a car phone, and this car phone was the biggest status symbol ever, right? Because it meant she was able to run her business from the road. She didn't have to be in the physical flower shop. When they were making deliveries, she could still do business. So it really made business something that she could perform and conduct from multiple locations, not just being stuck in one physical location. And then everyone seemed to have mentioned undergrad at some point. So one of my first software connections I have with undergrad was I did calling for the advancement center, and it was the first time I sat behind a computer and it like auto did the dialing and everything, and I just had to click next, and then it would dial the phone, and then I'd have a alumni on the phone I'd have to try to get donations from. But that was pretty crazy software for me at the time. So all of us can remember what it's like those first times that we interacted with the technology, and it's not necessarily always the most fun. And so when we think about AI, we're really talking about a technology that's transforming. It's transforming a lot of things, including digital marketing. And one of the important tools I always like to remind folks about is that technology adoption curve, and being mindful of where we as individuals may sit on that curve might be different from where our target audience sits on that curve, and it might be different from where the organizations that we work for sit on that curve. And so when we think about technology, when we think specifically about AI integration, leveraging AI for digital marketing, it's really important to understand I, as a person, may have a different comfort, connection, interest in adopting this technology than the organization I may work for or the target audience that I may be working with. And so being mindful of that, that's definitely something to think about, because really what we're talking about is transformation. When we're integrating AI into our work as digital marketers, we're really transforming what we are doing.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's great, and I do think it's important for us to really consider the fact that this is a major change in the way that marketing is done and the way that we're living our lives day to day. So being cognizant of the fact that everyone is going to be kind of different when it comes to how adept they are at maneuvering through that change. So now let's get more into the topic of authenticity as it relates to AI in marketing. And authenticity sort of means something different to everyone. So let's just have a little conversation about what that means to each of us. So, Di, can you start with that?
Sure. For me, authenticity means that as an individual, you're bringing your whole self to everything you do. So when you're showing up at your job, when you're creating any content for your own personal brand, if you are speaking somewhere, if you're appearing on a podcast, um, your whole self comes to that. So your personality, your values, your stories, your demeanor, your body language, all of those things. And then you're showing up as your whole self everywhere. So there's a level of consistency. So for me, consistency goes along with authenticity because I don't think you can be authentic if you're not being consistent. So your whole self shows up in all these places consistently so that your audience gets that sense that you are a real human person with human challenges and differences and stories and all of those things that go along with being human. To me, that is what authenticity is.
Great. Okay. So, Janan, how would you describe authenticity?
Well, I'm going to I really like what Di said. I'm going to build on that a little bit and take it to a brand as an organization. Um, from the standpoint of a brand as an organization, many of the attributes are the same. It's understanding and knowing and standing on your core values, your mission, the way that you solve problems for your customer, your target audience, how you communicate with them, making sure, as Di said, that that's always consistent and that it's consistent with what you have determined is the brand story of your relationship with that target market and that customer. Because at the end of the day, your authenticity is the biggest part of your relationship with your target audience or your customer. And how you show up for that relationship determines whether or not they see you as authentic.
What about you, Sarah?
I think authenticity has to do a lot with alignment. And so thinking about your personal values, are you able to bring those to the professional environments that you work in, the looking at the values of the organizations or the brands that you're representing from a marketing perspective? Is there alignment there? Values drive everything. They drive our thoughts, our decisions, our behaviors. And so for authenticity, it's really important that as a digital marketer, whatever brand you're representing or promoting, that you align with what's being put out there, what you are creating the marketing for, what you are pushing folks to either purchase or donate to, or exchange their time and effort and volunteerism or dollars for. You got to make sure there's alignment there.
So we have this idea that authenticity is really important, and that is sort of counterbalanced by the idea or the fact that at least at this point in marketing, there is a need for a quantity of materials. So, producing one truly authentic, heartfelt blog post every month isn't really enough anymore for a marketer. So, what do we do to kind of maintain the authenticity that we're striving for with the need to produce kind of a lot of material in many cases? Janon, what do you think?
Well, I think that the first thing that you need to do, or that we need to do as marketers, is to again go back to the essentials of what our brand relationship is and how our target market audience sees that relationship, where they look for that relationship, how they engage with that relationship, and build our content around that. Utilizing then AI as a partner, we can use AI to find insights regarding where our audience is showing up and how they're showing up, and then use those insights to plan accordingly regarding the quantity of, for instance, social media, how many times we need to be present at on a certain channel at a certain time for a certain campaign, and then also using that to help us build concepts, that using AI to help us build concepts from a starting point that resonate with our audience, but realizing that at the end of the day, we are the guardians of the brand, and we're the ones that will make the decisions regarding what is and is not authentic and what the frequency actually is, instead of just blindly throwing spaghetti at the wall and creating content just to create content, because sometimes more is just more. It is, we don't want to forget strategy in the mix, and how we're in, what our audience expects from a standpoint of interaction with us.
Right. And, strategy is definitely a key part of it, I think. And Sarah, you do a lot of work around strategy and thinking about the future. So, what would your advice be about, kind of creating enough content that is at the same time authentic?
Yeah, Genon made a good point about sometimes more is just more. So I always like to lean into the strategy piece of, do we even know where our target audience is? And we should be pretty well versed in where that is. So if you don't know where, and when I say where from a digital marketing perspective, often we're talking about online communities, social platforms. If you don't know where your target audience lives and breathes online, you need to do your research there. You really need to go about understanding where they are active. To Janon's point again, you can use AI tools to help you in that research effort. And then again, thinking about the quantity piece, sometimes it's fear that's speaking to us. Sometimes we're overwhelmed by, oh, we need so much quantity, and maybe that's not necessarily the case. Maybe that's just a thought that you're having in your head. That's why it's so important to build that strategy, to understand the platforms and where your target audience is, so that you know what amounts, what quantity of content you need, because it might not be that overwhelming once you do the research. Sometimes those fears can arise in us, or those anxieties can arise in us because we haven't developed the plan. We haven't done the work to know. Another piece I like to talk about too when we think about this quantity piece is, Rob mentioned about that monthly blog post. Well, a lot of us as digital marketers, there's a certain area of digital marketing that drew us to the field, or there's a reason that we like this. For some folks, it is they really love writing that monthly blog post, and for some other content creators, it might have to be about really loving to have short form video. Whatever that content area is that you love, keep doing it. Keep doing it, because if it's something that you find meaning and purpose and value in, we want you to be able to do more of that. And then once you have that work created, we'll go with this monthly blog example. If you love writing a blog, so you wrote the blog, use AI tools to then help you repurpose that blog into additional pieces of content that are relevant based on the platforms that you've strategically identified that your target audience is in. So think about, this quantity problem or challenge. Oh, we need so much content here. How can we reframe it into something that lets us still live into the passion or live into the area of digital marketing that we like, while leveraging these new tools that are now more business mainstream, that can help transform your work, so that in theory, you're freeing up more time to be able to write more of those blogs that you really love writing.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sarah. And what you said about kind of connecting to the passion, I think that's part of what makes it authentic, right? Is you have this interest or passion. I mean, even if it's not a passion that you might have in your personal life, if it's something related to what your company does and you believe strongly in that and you can connect to that, it's a lot easier to be true and authentic in whatever kind of content that you're actually producing. So let's go to Di. How would you say about balancing authenticity with quantity?
Well, I like what Sarah and Janon said, and I would just add, just to put a fine point on it, that uh, less content that is more authentic is going to win out always over just posting a bunch of content and creating a bunch of content. So also along those same lines, to sort of ramp up the authenticity and really make that connection. Once, as Sarah said, once you know where your audience is, you know who your audience is, don't be afraid to incorporate story, your personal story, into the content. And I would say that's even true with businesses and their brands. When you see these customer testimonials and things like that, personal stories are the thing that are going to really connect with the audience, because we're all, at the end of the day, even business is people, right? All business is personal. So to the extent that we can incorporate stories into the content, that's going to even ramp up the authenticity even more and allow us to touch the audience on a deeper, more human level. So make sure that story is making its way into that content to bring up the emotion, bring up the authenticity, and make that deeper connection with your customers.
So that brings us to or brings me to another thought. You have a lot of expertise in kind of personal branding, and we've kind of already established that being authentic is really important, and it would seem nowhere more important than who you are as an individual. And yet, I see lots of LinkedIn profiles that look all exactly the same, and lots of resumes and lots of content that people produce that all looks exactly the same and really lacks in authenticity. And that was even before AI became really prevalent. Now, with AI, it seems like, aren't we just all going to sound like exactly the same person?
Yes. The answer to that question is yes. You do see that, and I've noticed since the advent of AI, I have noticed a really enormous jump in the amount of same content being produced in so many places, and to the point where it's almost like, didn't I just read that? Like, that's the same thing, right? So if you are an individual and you're creating content for yourself, so let's say your LinkedIn profile, right? And you're looking to really ramp up your LinkedIn profile, you want to get more active on LinkedIn, you want to really, maybe you're looking for a job or you're looking to build a business on LinkedIn, you can use AI tools to help you, let's say, craft your about section or craft your LinkedIn headline. But when you do that, don't just plop a prompt there into ChatGPT and ask it to write it. Help it understand what your voice is. So one tip that I can share is that you can actually help AI understand your voice by uploading a piece of content that you have written into the prompt and then ask it to write, say, the about section, using that as a guide to what your voice is. So then it'll give you the response, and when it crafts the about section, now don't just take it blanket for what it is, copy and paste it into LinkedIn. Have a look at it. Does it match up with what you thought, how you would say that, or how you would write something? And if it doesn't, keep prompting the tool to adjust it. You can say things like, great start, but can you use more fun and engaging language, right? That's something I often use because I write in sort of a more fun way versus just very dry business speak. So you can do that as a personal brand. Businesses can also do that too. So if you have a business, you can upload content of that business's brand and use that as a guide so that the tool can capture the voice. So there's ways to help the tool to understand what your voice is so that it can give you the best response possible, so that when you are sharing this content, wherever it may be, you do not blend in a sea of sameness of everyone else, and you actually have incorporated your own individual voice into that content.
So, sticking with the idea of the personal brand, right? One of the things that you teach is storytelling,
Yes.
and there is an aspect of storytelling that would relate to a personal brand. But how could AI help with that part of it?
Yeah, so when you're doing storytelling, I think it's going to be helpful, of course, to, before you're using any AI tools, to have some body of content that you have created, and I think most of us have stuff we've created before AI. So anything that you've written or content you've created as the guide, right? But you can also, through practice and how you're prompting the AI, get it to create better and better results for you to share in content, any content you create. So it doesn't have to be that you necessarily upload a piece of content. You can just continue to prompt it. I've noticed that some people, as they, particularly when you start using AI tools, just give it the prompt, take the content, and then use it, and don't, you know, make any edits to it. Instead, I like to, when I use those tools, I give it some backstory, like some back information. So if I'm going in there and I'm saying, I'm asking it to write, let's say my about section for LinkedIn, for example, I might give it some backstory on me. I might say, you know, I'm a I teach in digital marketing degree program. I teach digital storytelling and branding. I'm also a speaking coach. I work with this type of client. I like to speak on the topics of, I don't know, storytelling and personal branding, and I speak in the Orlando area. I give it a lot of information, and I might even tell the tool, you know, some of the things that I care about in my message are authenticity, whatever they are, right? Authenticity. I like to use fun and engaging language. I like to make the audience laugh. Give it some back information to help it understand who you are. That is going to help it to create content, and over time, as it gets to learn who you are, it's going to start to create more and more content that is authentic to your voice. So you can use stories in that way. Give it some of your own stories and let it use those to help craft any kind of content messaging or whatever it may be that is more aligned with who you are and what your actual story is.
So I personally see lots of things on LinkedIn and on social media that feel like, well, AI just generated that, and um, not only does that lack authenticity, but it sort of puts me off. It feels like, why are you creating this content again? You're just adding to the sea of content that's out there that doesn't actually say anything. So how can you use AI for like creating social media posts, for instance, while maintaining your own sense of who you are?
That's a good question. And I would say along those same lines, it has to have the back information to be able to give you appropriate content aligned with your brand. And just a point to note is that if you are the content creator creating content that incorporates story, incorporates your voice, incorporates authenticity, you are going to stand out. So there's all this content all over, you know, the internet, right? And a lot of it is very generic and bland and the same. So if you are creating content that has story and emotion and authenticity, you are easily going to rise head and shoulders above any of the other content. So make sure that you, one thing I would suggest is create sort of a bank of content of anything that you've created and anything that you've even used AI to generate. Create this bank of content, especially when the content really, really aligns with your brand, your voice. Create that bank of content and use that as the guide to create that content. But also, please, everybody using AI tools, take what the AI gives you and then adjust it. I almost never take anything that ChatGPT generates and just use it. I would say 10 out of 10 times, I take it and then I modify it and I take out words that I know I would never use and I put in my own language, or I adjust sentences. Or if it gives me, let's say it gives me 5 title ideas for an article. Okay, I might like a portion of this one and a portion of that one and a portion of this one. So, and I'll take and combine and create my own title that's more aligned with who I am. So we have to not become so reliant on the tools that we just blanket take what it gives us. We still, as someone mentioned earlier, we still need a human touch. We still need that human touch to massage it and modify it and edit it. And think of you as sort of the editor of what it's outputting, right? So you're still the editor, you're still in charge. So take that content and make it your own, and don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you could sort of look at it as you hired an intern to write things for you, and would you just blanket post those things out there?
You would never do that.
And also, you need to teach that person or now that AI who you actually are and how to kind of represent
Mhm.
you. And it can learn more as you go over time by you getting better at prompting and it understanding more of what you're trying to get to.
Exactly.
So let's shift a little bit over to away from the personal brand and more toward, company brands or organizational brands. And Genon, you have a lot of experience creating all different kinds of content for very different kinds of organizations, in addition to what you do here at Full Sail. So how do you see AI impacting that world where kind of corporate marketing is needing to produce content that is authentic but usable and actually uh, gets consumers to take the action that you want them to take?
Well, I think we were alluding to this just now, but I think it will create a hierarchy of creative directors, with each of the content creators being a type of creative director, editing, as Diaz said, and massaging content, whether that be visual content, written content, auditory content, uh, any print, whatever it is. The wonderful things about AI that all marketing and departments and agencies can use, obviously, are that AI can provide some wonderful, fresh ideas if prompted correctly, and those can be massaged to provide new, fresh, exciting ways of engaging and interacting with the audience. And it's got an nearly infinite access to an aggregation of all kinds of resources that you may or may not think of on your own, that it can bring to help inform how you're interacting with your audience. It also, can provide sort of a leveling of playing field between larger organizations and smaller organizations from the standpoint of access to some higher quality image creation and video creation, uh, and pure quantity, as we had referred to earlier, because the scheduling can be compacted and compressed, since we don't need as many human beings to do things, and we can do things a lot faster. But again, I would treat AI as a assistant, a collaborator that with myself or the other as a content creator, as the decision maker and the executive. And it actually frees me, you, all content developers up to do more of that high level thinking and that high level creative strategic planning that we sometimes just don't have time to do because there's just so many hours in the day. And it will also allow us to plan better prompting so that it can be a better collaborator, just by virtue of the fact that it takes care of a lot of the execution. That allows us to plan creatively prompting so that we can get more authentic and engaging content, and then free us up again to be the decision maker at the end, who determines this is where we're going to go with this content, and this is how it's going to be distributed, and this is where we're going to reevaluate it. There are some dangers in this. There's still some ugly in AI. Just recently, Coca-Cola got slammed with a lot of criticism from their market for a AI produced Christmas holiday video. They're the high shoulder season for Coca-Cola is the holidays, and Coca-Cola is very famous for its touching, emotional, and engaging pieces. And their feedback that they got on the most recent release was how inauthentic and fakey and contrived and awful it was. And it was completely produced, reutilizing assets that were previously created and putting it into a piece that was created completely by AI. It wasn't received well. So that doesn't mean, oh, don't experiment with AI, don't use AI to repurpose things. What it means is we still have a lot to learn. And even the biggest brands with the strongest brand stories are still learning how to do this. We're new at this. So does that mean, oh, let's be afraid, let's not try anything? No. But it does mean that mistakes can still be made even by the biggest, best brains in marketing right now. And so we need to take on that courage that we had when we were learning how to use computers through the years and all the other technology that we learned through the years, and just realize we're going to make mistakes. And so continue to work with it, continue to be the brand advocate, continue to listen to the market, and continue to experiment. And we will learn along with our teaching of AI to learn about our brand.
So, Genon, you have said that the idea is that you're partnering with AI to create authentic content. So in that partnership, that would involve the marketer on one side and the AI on the other side. What does each of those kind of bring to the table? How is that? How does that actually work?
Well, in my world, in my little world, I would say that the initial creative idea and spark comes from the human, and the prompting to reach the vision of that creativity is provided to the AI collaborator, whether that's a visual collaborator or a word content generator, whatever that collaborator is. And that the AI is only as good as the prompting that you give it. As per what Di said earlier, everything that you can provide to the AI collaborator to help hone in the authenticity of the message based on your brand story, your brand values, your brand mission, the relationship that you have with your audience and what they expect from you as consumers and customers within that relationship. Everything that you can provide to that is important. Case in point, another example, Dove Real Beauty is working, has had that campaign opened in 2004. Sorry, I'm stumbling around a little bit. That campaign has evolved, and now they're utilizing a AI to help generate content, but they have created an AI prompt book. Just as you would have a brand Bible, they've got an AI prompt Bible. And I think that's something that we're going to see trending as people get more comfortable, as marketing departments get more comfortable with working with AI. That way they're more comfortable that their content creators are going to be kept within a guidelines that will help create the type of content they want, because they have also made a commitment that they are not going to artificially enhance any images of women, because their brand is real beauty. So they can't, that's a cardinal rule that you can't go against. Inclusivity is a really important part of that. So in their AI prompt book, they spend pages teaching you language so that you can prompt AI appropriately to help provide imagery and written content. I think that that's the way that we're, potentially going to be going to help us be better collaborators with this tool that's so powerful and has access to so much information that can be so helpful to us, at least from a content creation standpoint. Now, I don't know, Sarah would better be able to speak to how AI would be a good partner from a strategy standpoint. But from a content creation standpoint, that's where I'm seeing it right now. And I'm sure it'll evolve.
Yeah, so Sarah, you're a strategist and a futurist, so you're kind of always looking forward. So what do you think? Is this is I guess a couple of things. First of all, Genon talked about Dove and the way that they're doing it, and it seems like a lot of companies are at the stage of trying to figure out how are we going to actually manage all of this because it is this new frontier of things. And then a second part of that is the idea of the amount of content that gets produced, and does that devalue all content, and how do you develop a strategy around around that?
All right, that's a multi-pronged question there. So I'll do
Sorry.
my best to remember all the prongs. But building off of what Janan just shared, when we're talking about AI integration and use within brands, there's that element of I myself need to understand and use and integrate AI into workflows. But then there's that lens of, okay, I'm a leader of a team, of a department, of a business, of an organization. And I need to not only make sure I know what's going on, but making sure the people on my team, the humans on my team, the humans that are part of the organization are also upskilling and being prepared to live up to whatever those brand standards are and those bumpers are that we put on AI use within organizations. And that's really a fundamental piece when we start thinking about strategically integrating AI into our work. There's companies right now that have made blanket statements of our employees can't use AI. And then I'm hearing folks working for those companies say, hey, you know what? I'm using it. I hope I don't get caught. I don't tell anyone. And then on the other side, we have companies that are openly creating committees and teams that are working with multi-departmental teams, not just the IT department, of figuring out what's an AI policy for us. What are some ways that we want to encourage our folks in the marketing department and other departments to utilize AI in a way that fits and aligns with what our brand is. So there's a lot involved in that space. And really, when we think about it, it comes down to, are we cultivating a culture of learning and growth within the organizations that we lead and we influence? At the end of the day, it's awesome to be a really great digital marketer, but it's also awesome to be a really great digital marketing leader in using our voice and using our influence to drive change and transformation. Jana mentioned some of the dark sides of AI, if you will. I encourage you to check out Amy Webb's book, The Big Nine. I encourage you to check out Coded Bias on Netflix. Great resources to get more engaged on that lens as well. But when we think about AI from a practical perspective, so many folks right now are entering the conversation about AI and how or how not it's going to transform their work, and they haven't even used it yet. They haven't even tested it with 5 minutes of their time. And so I always encourage folks, especially digital marketers, is we already have a tech suite that we use to do our work. If you're a business owner, if you have any type of personal brand, you have a tech suite you're using, whether you recognize it or not. And many, if not all, already integrating AI, whether you know it or not. And also, they're offering you as a user functionality that integrates AI. What's the harm in testing it out? What's the harm in clicking that button that says rewrite with AI or integrate AI, or that little AI button you don't even know what it means? Just click it and see what it does, right? Going back to this ongoing conversation we've had about your first interactions with the technology. Nobody's a pro the first time they pick up a piece of technology, or they log into a certain software for the first time, it takes baby steps, right? It takes time to do it. So start today, and spend. I tell my students, if you spend 30 minutes a week, so block out a 30-minute block of time on your calendar, and you just learn about AI, whether it's simple as Googling, or, hey, you know what, I'm going to do a free trial of this certain software that has an AI piece, or I'm going to look into the software we already use and figure out how they're integrating AI. It doesn't have to be so daunting. It can be those baby steps that we take. It's interesting. Gallup Research shared a study that they did in Q2 of this year, US based primarily, participants in it, with AI use in the workplace. And from those that they had in this study, 2/3 of them had never used AI in their work. And then those that had used AI in their work found that it drastically helped with their productivity and efficiency. So again, when we think about this piece about strategically integrating and leveraging AI, yes, we have it from the perspective of it's going to help us create awesome content that we want to make sure that we're in, leveraging authenticity, making sure that we're the editors of that, retaining our executive voice in what we're moving forward with. But we also need to start crawling. Okay, we got to start crawling before we can walk and before we can run with this. And so I just always encourage folks, just start trying something. You'll learn over time. You'll find what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And again, back to that digital marketing perspective, there may be certain tasks that I'm really going to lean into AI and have AI help me with. And there's going to be other tasks that maybe I don't. And that's okay. There's not a rule book to say that you have to do specific outputs with AI. It's what is going to help you be the most effective and efficient digital marketer, and how can AI technology help you with that? So, that was a multi-faceted question there, Rob. So I don't know if I hit everything, but I hope so.
I think you did, Sarah, and I'm sorry for throwing out that crazy question. But what you were saying, it really aligns with something that I hear Paul Raitzer from the Marketing AI Institute talk about a lot, which is even big companies are making investments in testing out and piloting AI, but they don't really know what they're doing, and a lot of them are finding like their employees are saying, well, we're not really using it, when in fact they kind of are, but they're afraid to say how they're using it because they don't understand what they are allowed to do, or conversely, they aren't actually using it because no one actually trained them how to use it. So I think that's another important part of it, and as it relates to this conversation is, understanding how to train the AI. If you're using generative AI to create content, you have to teach it how to be authentic and how to actually represent you. So just open this up in general, like, are there any specific tips that you have about how you use AI in a way that I think easiest to, if it reflects you personally, right? So if you're writing something, I know, Di, you talked about, you give it a lot of a backstory, but how do you rewrite that every single time that you're asking it to help you prompt something? Or, I know we've talked about prompt libraries and things. How do you, just logistically, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, if you create this backstory of who you are and what your values are and all those things, I mean, you could just save that in a document, and then but over time the AI will learn that and it will write more and more in your voice. Um, but I would say, just to sort of encapsulate some things that everybody else has said in relation to this idea of, like, businesses and people maybe are saying, oh, I don't like it, or I do like it, but they maybe haven't even really used it. So I think a couple of things to keep in mind that can help us better leverage these tools is, number one, always be curious, right? So I think curiosity is probably your best friend when it comes to any change of any kind. And particularly this, because we are all of us kind of in sort of the wild west of AI time, right? None of us, we're all just learning, and none of us really know where it's going to go, right? And so I think just to be curious and be kind of experimental with the use of it, but then also as you're creating content, yes, get it accustomed to your voice, get it learning that, help it with the prompts and all of that, and don't be afraid to experiment with those tools. But also make sure that what you're doing is in service of the audience, right? So whether you're an individual and you're creating content for your personal brand, or you're a business creating content for the end customer to consume, always in service of the audience. So to Janon's point about the Coca-Cola example, I mean, clearly, I don't know what all went into that decision to use AI for that purpose, but I did watch that ad and I also thought, oh, this is not good. And I recently watched a video on YouTube because I was thinking about maybe buying a new car. So I was looking at these videos about different cars. And this video was about the 5 cars you shouldn't buy. So of course, clickbait, number one, right? Whatever. So I clicked on it to watch it, but then it became abundantly apparent right off the bat that it was AI generated and it was not good. So that's not in service of the audience. I mean, can you create that content? Sure. Did I click on it? Yes. However, as soon as I recognized it was AI, I immediately didn't trust it, not because the information is necessarily incorrect, but it didn't appear as if a human even looked at it. So like if a human then looks at it and edits it and modifies it, I might feel more comfortable with it. But that's what happened, I think, with the Coca-Cola situation is that it's like, okay, we can use this great tool. Let's create this thing. But is it in service of the audience? No, because the audience wants that touchy-feely human connection with Coca-Cola that they have come to love since it was invented in the late 1800s, right? We want that feeling, especially at the holidays. So when we remove that, now the content we're creating is not in service of the audience, it's in service of us. And that is a huge mistake because we aren't creating it for us. We are creating it for them. And there needs to be that connection. So be curious, experiment with the tools, and make sure that what you're creating is in service of the audience. And then you're going to get a much better product as you're experimenting with these tools and sort of learning as you go.
So my sense is, on an individual basis, there are a lot of people who are anxious about the idea of experimenting with AI tools. And, many, if not most of them, of the generative AI tools that people are familiar with are available for free. So there isn't really a reason not to give it a try, in my opinion. But it does feel like there is this sense of it's taking my information and who knows what's going to happen with it. And so a lot of fear around that. So Sarah, like how would you address that fear? I mean, in terms of, somebody who maybe is like, ChatGPT doesn't sound like anything that I would need to use. And what if it takes all my secret information and, somehow uses that to generate other people's answers? Or, you've probably heard crazy things that people have said that are along those lines.
hmm Yeah, and I'll say this, of course, follow what your employer says. So if your employer is telling you not to use it on a work device, don't use it on a work device. But I'll follow up to that by a lot of times our fears around using new technology is just because it's different and it's scary and we don't know a lot about it and we don't necessarily know like what to even do. Um, and so I always encourage folks just to try. If you don't want to provide it with your whole life story, you don't have to, right? You can do something as simple as prompting it with simple things that have nothing to do with you as an individual, just to start using it, just to start getting experience with it. You mentioned ChatGPT, for instance. Like, type something in there. It doesn't have to do with anything to do with your work, anything to do with your family. We were joking about the weather earlier. You could type something in there about weather and just start playing with it and prompting it based on responses and things of that nature. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're doing important and confidential work using the tools. You can just have those first initial experiences with it being just, what is this? I'm just going to trial this. I'm going to see what's going on. Another area when I think about folks that are having maybe some insecurity with new technology is thinking about spaces that you may interact with multi-generational folks. So there could be nonprofits you're a part of, churches you're a part of, local organizations, your neighborhood, your family. Think about there's ways that you're going to be able to get with different folks with different lived experiences, different maybe connection points to technology, different comfort level with technology, and just say, hey, can we sit down for 5 minutes and look at this? What is this? What do I do? How do I do it? So really helping to demystify some of this stuff with AI being it's super professional, and I've got to put confidential stuff in there, to just making it more mainstream of, let's just see what this tool is. Let's just check it out, see what it is, how we might be able to use it, and then build your comfort level from there. So I think that would be my biggest point for folks that are really fearful about even using it in any capacity. Is just start somewhere, baby step, right? It doesn't have to be, we need to build out a 5-year business plan that's going to lead us into new markets and new product development, and secure new profit margins we've never hit before. It could be as simple as prompting it, how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and see what it says. You might not have made it the way it tells you to make it.
Right. Excellent point. I heard from someone who said, "Well, I use it all the time to get parenting tips. Not that you should rely on it because it might be hallucinate parenting tips too, but it doesn't have to be some big thing. But kind of uh, going off what Sarah just said, Janon, you've worked for some really big organizations and some really different kinds of organizations. And so, there's a level of bureaucracy there, or bureaucracy, I guess is the right word. How do you think you combat, or not combat? How do you address AI in a bigger organization so that you get buy-in to be able to use it in the most effective way possible?
Wow, that's a big question, Rob. Um, I I think that most executives respond to value, and you can start with research. Research is pretty innocuous if you're not sending anything out to the marketplace. If this is marketing, doing some research and experimenting with just some pretend fun campaign ideas, and produce, say, 3. Uh, Flush those out without spending a lot of time and effort on them, so that they're not wondering if you're spending all if they're paying you to do this. And then take somebody to lunch and say, hey, let me show you something. I think this is something that I'd like to try for a campaign that you think would be a good starter place, or maybe suggest an idea of a place. But whatever you do, of course, executive management is going to make a decision, and then you need to abide by it. But in most of the larger companies that I have worked with, and maybe I've also had to slide in, as an outsider, and get buy-in. And most executives will respond to results-driven information and opportunity. They're in the position that they're in because they're forward thinking, and they have the best of the company in mind. That's how they're judged. So if it's going to provide an opportunity and a value, they might try it on something that isn't high risk. And then you better make sure you execute it really well, and then you'll get buy-in on the next project. That would be a suggestion. And I did want to piggyback on the prompting, that there's and this also kind of is related to this. There are really, there's 2 ways that you can prompt something. You can prompt something to get a vision met that you have, and you can prompt something to get options of choices. And so maybe if you prompt for options of choices and show executive management that particular use of AI as a starting point, it's a little less scary. It's not, it doesn't require, it's not giving the AI as much information as Sarah was talking about. So if you prompt it for choices and show them that, that also might be a way to introduce someone to the power of using it to help with the marketing.
Great. Okay. Well, we have reached the end of an hour, and I can't believe that. But thank you to my friends for being here today. I have had the opportunity to work with these amazing, smart people for a long time now, and I appreciate that and them. And also to everyone watching, thank you for being here. I hope that you got some useful information out of that, and we are more than happy to answer any questions about AI, authenticity, or full sale. So just let us know. Have a great day.